Good morning, dear second year students. We are back with another lecture of English, Phonetics and Phonology. So we are back with the third part of the fourth chapter. This part is mainly concerned with plosives. A plosive consonant articulation with the following characters. One articulator is moved against another, or two articulators are moved against each other to form a structure that allows no air to escape from vocal tract. The structure is then total. This means what? It means that these two articulators, sometimes one of them is stable, it cannot move, so we move the other one instead. And maybe there are two articulators, like the lips, when we move the lips one against each other. These two articulators, they form a structure, so it means there is a closure. The two consonants are the two articulators are moving against each other and they are closing the air tract. There is no air escape, so there is a total structure, a total closure. This is the first phase of it. After this structure has been formed and the air has been compressed behind it, it is released. That's the air is allowed to escape. So after this total closure, the air is totally compressed under a very high pressure. Then the air is released. When it's released and escaped, it will form the second part of the production of that plosive sound. C, we have if the air behind the structure is still under pressure, then the plosive is released. It's possible that the escape of the air will produce noise loud enough to be heard, and this noise is called plosion. Well, here in this phase, if the air behind the structure is still under pressure, when the plosive is released, it's possible that the escape of the air will produce noise loud enough to be heard. This noise is called plosion. Well, the plosion happens when the air is compressed and then released. When I have no air behind the structure, behind that, it will create no plosion. But when I compress the air and release it, this will definitely cause a noise that can be heard. So this is called plosion. So the fourth stage of the production of the plosive sound may or may not include voicing. So there may be voicing during part or all of the plosive articulation, or maybe not. So we have discussed also voicing in the previous lecture. To give a complete description of the plosive consonant, we must describe it as it happens, each of the following four phases in production. So you see that these are the fourth stages that actually describe what happened when you are making a consonant sound. The first one, the first phase, when the articulator or articulators move to form the structure, move to form the closure for the plosive. We call this the closing phase. So as we discussed, we move the articulators against each other, like for example the lips. When we want to make a sound like p or a sound like b, I move the lips one against the other and then I close them and will allow no air to escape, so the air is not allowed to escape. The second phase is when the compressed air is stopped from escaping. We call this the compression phase. Well, when after I form a structure, I will compress the air. I will not allow the air to escape. This will create a pressure, a compressed air behind the closed part of the third phase, or the third stage, when the articulators used to form the structure are moved, so the air is allowed now to escape. So it's called the release phase. When the articulators are now moving apart from each other, so in this part the air is released. In this stage the air is released, so it can actually escape. After that, there is a fourth phase, a fourth stage. It happens immediately after the third one, so we will call it the post-release phase. When this post-release phase, actually when we are creating, when the air escapes, the post-release phase requires the plosion, the heard plosion that we are hearing. So actually these are the four stages in which I can create a consonant sound. When I make a consonant sound, I have to go through these four stages in order to make a plosive sound. So in this section, which is English plosives, we are mainly concerned with the phonology part of that, which is, or the phonological part of this book. So in every stage of this book, in this textbook, we are discussing two parts, which is phonetics and phonology. So in phonetics, we have discussed that also earlier. In phonetics, we are mainly concerned with the physical part, how the sound is produced, the actual part, how the sound is produced, how it's pronounced, these types of questions. But when we are talking phonology, we are talking about the rules of language. So phonetics is mainly concerned with all the languages. There is no specific language, how the speech sounds are produced in all the languages. But when we are talking phonology, we are talking about a specific language. In this case, we are talking about English, a specific language in which the sounds happen and how the sounds are produced in English, which is in relation with the other sounds in English. So in phonology, we specify the sounds, we specify the phonemes included in that language. In this case, we have in English plosives, we have 6 plosive consonants. So English contains 6 plosive consonants. They are what? P, T, K, B, D, G. And the glottal plosive. Well, the glottal plosive, which is E, it occurs frequently, but it's of less importance since it's an alternative production. It's an alternative production of what? Of P, T, K. So instead of saying, for example, matter, in some context I say ma. Or instead of saying what happened, sometimes they say what happened. So this glottal plosive replaces the consonants in some circumstances. The plosives P and B are bilabial. So bilabial, it means that they are formed by closing the two lips together. So since the lips are pressed together, T, D are alveolar. So it means what? The tongue blade is pressed against the alveolar ridge. So the blade of the tongue is pressed against the alveolar ridge when T and D are made. We have the plosives K and G, which are velar. It means what? The back of the tongue is pressed against the area where the hard palate ends and the soft palate begins. So it's technically when this area between the velum and the hard palate, but still we call it what? Vela. The plosives p, t, k are always voiceless. So now we are talking about voicing. They are always voiceless. B, d, g are sometimes fully voiced, sometimes partly voiced, and sometimes voiceless. So we will consider that B, D, G should be called in section 4.5 below. Well, because these are voiced and voiceless sounds here, and even the voiced sounds are not always voiced, so this will require a different amount of detailed description. In the phonology part also, we discuss whether a certain position is occupied by the sound or not. It means, for example, here all 6 plosives can occur at the beginning of a word, which is called initial position, and they can occur between other sounds, which is medial position, means in the middle of the word, and at the end of the word, which is final position. So it means that all 3 positions are possible for a plosive to happen. But first we need to discuss how we are going to represent them. If we are talking about initial position, medial position, and final position, how we are going to discuss them, how we are going to represent them when we are writing. So to begin with, we will look at plosives preceding vowels, which can be abbreviated as CV. Means C means consonant and V means vowel. So when I say CV, it means the consonant comes first and then the vowel. When we are talking about VCV, means there is a vowel at the beginning and it's followed by a consonant and then it's followed by a vowel. So this means what? It means the medial position. When I say VC, it means the vowel precedes the consonant and the consonant is in the final position. You can see in this figure, which is figure 15, the bilabial articulation of plosives. We can say that you see that the 2 lips are actually coming across each other. They will form a structure or a closure here. This closure will hold the ear and it will create the plosive sound in P and in B. You see in this position we are talking about the alveolar position. So this is the alveolar ridge, this is the alveolar ridge, and this is the blade of the tongue when it touches the alveolar ridge. So you see this is what makes the structure, or what forms the structure here. This position is the velar position. You see that this is the velum and this is the back of the tongue. So actually the structure is created here and the air is actually compressed in this area. This area, the air is compressed and it will not be allowed to escape, and when this structure is open, now the sound can be produced, the sound can be released and heard. So the first position in which a consonant can occur, or in this particular case a plosive consonant can occur, is the initial position, which it means that it can occur, it can come at the beginning of the word. In this position, the closing phase for P, T, K and B, D, G takes place silently. It means what? When the closing of these two, there is no voicing in, like p, t, k. Actually they are voiceless, but when we're discussing b, d, g as voice sounds, when they come at the initial position, there is a little voicing. There is a little voicing. But actually, what makes the initial position is so prominent is for p, t, k, in which the sound of the plosion can be heard. So there is an audible plosion. The sound of the plosion can be heard here. On this burst of air escapes through the vocal folds, we call that aspiration. So aspiration is this burst of air escapes can be heard when we say words like pen. You see that the aspiration is heard, or this burst of air is heard. So this what really makes this position, or the initial position, very important. So I need you just to focus on aspiration, and remember that even the voicing is very little in this situation, and this position of consonant occurrence. So the medial position, which is V, C, V, when the consonant here, or in this case the plosive, is preceded by a vowel and followed by a vowel. The production of P, T, K and B, D, G in medial position depends to some extent on whether the syllables preceding and following the plosive are stressed. So now we have two things to discuss. The first one is syllable, and the second thing is stress. So we are talking about syllables. A syllable is mainly a combination of sounds, but it should have a vowel at the center. So when I can recognize, for example, words like sister, you see that these are two syllables here. When I say beautiful, so these are three syllables here. So whether these syllables are stressed or not stressed means I can pronounce them in a stronger position than the other. For example, when I say import, I say M is stressed and port is not stressed. So the production of these sounds depend on whether the syllables are stressed or not. Now we have the final position, which is VC. It means vowel followed by a consonant, and this consonant is at the end of the word. Final B, D, G normally have little voicing. See that this is also with little voicing, which are normally regarded as voiced, but still there are degrees of voicing. When it comes at the final position, also there is a little voicing. If there is voicing, it's at the beginning of the compression phase. So when we start the compression phase and when you release it, it's just a little voicing. The plosion following the release P, T, K and B, D, G is very weak often. So when it comes and even not audible. So when it comes at the end, the plosive sound is very weak when it comes at the end of the word. So the difference between P, T, K and B, D, G is primarily the fact that the vowels preceding P, T, K are much shorter. Of course, this depends on P, T, K because they are strong consonants, so they shorten the vowel. So this is called the shortening effect of p, t, k, and it's called pre-fortis clipping. Now we are going to see that there are also other fortis sounds, which means strong sounds, strong consonants. These strong consonants, and in this case we have strong plosives, they make an effect, or they affect the other sounds preceding or following them. So in this case, the vowels preceding them, they are what they clipped, they are shortened, so they are not as long as we can see them. When I say, for example, words like bag, word, the g at the end is not fortis, it's lenis. But when I say bat, see, there is a little difference between the a sound in these two cases. The a in bat and bat, it's what shorter than the a in bag, so it's called a pre-fortis clipping. So this will lead us to the final subject in this chapter, which is the fortis and lenis. Well, this term, when we use fortis and lenis term, now it's a modern way to say voiced or voiceless, because you know we have discussed that b, d, g are voiced plosives. This is a question here: are b, d, g voiced plosives? Well, it's not accurate here. We have discussed that they are not always voiced in all the positions, so it's not very accurate to call them voiced. So instead we should make another term for that. So in initial and final position they are scarcely voiced. It's a little voicing here. In any voicing they may have, seems to have no perceptual importance, so it's not very prominent, it's very little to notice. So some phoneticians say that p, t, k is produced with some force. So now we are not discussing the voiced or voiceless, now we are discussing the force in which we can produce them. So when we are talking about fortis and lenis, say that it's with some force. So the p, t, k, when you pronounce them, you see that you are making some kind of effort which is bigger than b, d, g, and in that it would therefore be better to give two sets of plosives, some of them and some other consonants, names that indicate the fact that voiceless plosives are sometimes called fortis. It means strong. I mean they are produced with a kind of effort. And b, d, g are called lenis. It means weak. So when we produce them, there is a lower effort when we produce them. So it may well be true for that p, t, k are produced with more force. It means that now they are stronger than that. So you see here that fortis or voiceless consonants like p, t, k, and we have voiced or lenis consonants, they are b, d, g. This table actually summarizes everything in the place of articulation and in the manner of articulation. So this is the end of the 4th chapter, and I hope I will see you on next chapters, and thank you very much.